Welcome, everyone, to the Songwriters on Process podcast. My name is Benno Papari, and on this podcast, I take a deep dive into the writing process behind some of the world's best songwriters. By way of background, I am a former English professor. I have a PhD in English language and literature, and I'm a writer myself. So this is a conversation about writing between two writers. My goal has always been to treat songwriters the same way that we treat prose writers, just as writers, plain and simple. So that's all we focus on. I don't care about tour stories, favorite bands, how bands get their name, favorite foods, anything like that. This is, again, a deep dive into the songwriting process with some of the world's best songwriters. And with that, let's get into today's episode. And today on the pod, it is Jason Newsted. Now, of course, you know Newsted, or you should, for his time as the bassist in Metallica. I know I sure did. I'm a big metal fan and remember him from his Flotsam and Jetsam days, but saw Metallica many times. But since leaving, he's been very active. He has a band called Jason Newsted and the Chop House Band, and he describes it as a gritty brand of outsider Americana with roots outstretched into traditions of bluegrass, folk, soul rock, and a bit of heavy metal. They're actually on tour now supporting Blackberry Smoke, so you get a sense of kind of where their music lies. And there's a lot of live stuff on the internet, on YouTube. Check it out. I loved this conversation because we actually talked a lot about, I think, the creative process in general, and certainly not just music. Newsted is an avid visual artist, does tons of paintings, sells tons of paintings. So we talked about how those processes overlap. Quite literally, here's what I mean by this. He will put lyrics, and you'll hear him talk about this. He puts song lyrics on a canvas, on a blank canvas. And he mentions actually a Jim Croce song that he put the lyrics of the canvas, the blank canvas on the lyrics. Sorry, he put the lyrics on the blank canvas and then painted over it based on how those lyrics kind of stimulated him, got him thinking. So we talked a lot about his painting, not just about songwriting. This was a deep, really fascinating conversation into what spurs us creatively, what drives us to create. So certainly we did talk about the process, how he writes and when he writes and writer's block and things like that. But this was just a fascinating, again, conversation into the drive to create, not just the drive to write, the drive to create. So loved this. This is would have loved to talk to him for much longer, but he's a busy guy. They are on tour right now, as I said, Jason Newsted and the Chop House Band. Check them out. And here is my interview with Jason Newsted. Do you think it's important to create in some fashion every day, no matter what it is? Or do you feel, because I think if you've talked to prose writers, they will tell you button the seat no matter how bad it is, but songwriters often don't feel that way. So I'd love to know if you think that creating every day is in some fashion, in some way important, or do you think that can make things sound derivative?
So I'm sitting in the Chop House HQ in Tequesta, Florida, which is about a half hour above West Palm, right next to Jupiter, Florida, is the next town over here. And it's the former Tequesta post office. And so I bought it about 5 years ago and gutted it and built. So this is where I create every day. All right, and I've been doing that I've had a mantra for, how old are you now?
56. I had to think about that for a second.
Oh, you sure? So for a long time, some decades, I have had the mantra of make something every day so I know it was there that day. Right? So it could be a painting this size like that. That's my homage to Cypress Hill behind you. And then this building has 600 completed canvases in it and probably 3,000 drawings of different sizes, different materials and all of it. No rules, right? So I do create every day. Right now I'm in full music mode. I have my net cast constantly for obscure songs that I can make my own. The Chop House Band covers all kinds of ground, all the way from real genuine bluegrass all the way to slabs, right? Everything in between. And I just play songs from my heroes. I play mostly original music, but the songs that we do choose and catch in our net are from heroes. And it could be older heroes that all of us have, John Prine or Johnny Cash or, Pablo Picasso. The older ones, everybody is eventually, that cream is recognized. And I think it's even more important to take on young heroes every day or every week if you can, whether you're listening or whether you meet them in person. So I try to do that as much as I can. Everybody in my band's younger than me. I was in Nashville last week and met a bunch of new young heroes. A lot, pretty famous people and stuff, but I hadn't met them yet. And so these kind of things are what make me want to keep creating. It's what gives me hope. Because there are people that still mean it. Amongst all of the cheating, amongst all of the auto tune shit and all that stuff, there are still people that can play the song from top to bottom flawlessly, and that gives me hope when I see these young people. So it makes me want to keep creating. I do write songs a lot. I write lyrics and poems a lot. I've been working 5.5 years on my book, My Man, so I'm driving that boat. And I'm at about 145,000 words, or something like that. So there's chapters and chapters and chapters of stories and memoirs and all that. Nothing that's been, beat to death. Redundant things I don't do in my book. It's my POV. The things a pretty unique POV when it comes right down to it, and you boil it right down. So just trying to share the things that I've learned in my time around the world so far.
So, if you're trying to create and in one genre, whether it's the memoir, the poems, the songs, the visual art, and you're not feeling it, do you switch to another one just to feel like you've gotten something accomplished?
Don't necessarily shift gears that plainly black and white. I'm usually immersed in the one and can do some peripheral of the others. Um, you know, let me see, where am I here? So I hadn't done any paintings or art for a while, but I do a lot of guitars. I paint a lot of guitars. I buy some a batch, paint them, give them away to people, or do auctions for the veterans or for like kids art programs, something like that. So I've done quite a few over time. So Sunday morning before I went to rehearsal, my buddy from Fender sent me. I play acoustasonic, and so this is about the 15th or 20th one I've done. So I did that in an hour on Sunday morning as I was sitting with coffee with my wife, that we had that moment to be together, doing what we do, but still being together. So because I hadn't got to any canvas for a couple of months now, I do either a drawing at night when I'm winding all the way down and hadn't really got something done that day, that I'll do a little sketch, I'll do a little thing, always date it and sign it, no matter how complex or simple. Same with songs. Put the idea down, try to name it a little something that I can remember. Always do verbal notes on my voice. That's an A minor to a D and da, 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 capo on five, so I can come back to it. Do a lot of that kind of thing, riffs on voice memo. But painting that guitar was what I could do for that morning. I did end up playing 4 hours later of music and recorded, and it was actually a private party and stuff. So I did all that in one day, but I still do um, insist on making some type of mark, no matter how quiet or loud, every day to know that I was there.
So let me ask you about writer's block, or let's call it a rut. So I'll give you a quote. So I interviewed the writer Anthony Doerr. He wrote a great book called All the Light We Cannot See, won the Pulitzer Prize for fiction about 10 years ago. And I asked him about writer's block, and he said, I don't believe in writer's block. He said, writer's block is a failure of courage. And right, I know that was my thought. I think I get chills when I even say that still. And when I was a professor, I told my students writer's block happens not because we don't know what to say, but because we don't know where to begin. I don't think our minds are blank. I think that we think too much about, and this is prose again, we think about, oh, I've got to start at the beginning. So I always think about once I get something down, I have momentum. I guess my general question is, what is your take on writer's block in general? And if you do get in those ruts, are there hacks that you use to break through?
I think maybe I'll link back to your last question. Say if I do run into something where I'm I don't think block is something that I've run into, but frustration is certainly
Mm.
something I've run into, and distraction, or maybe frustration with distraction, you know? And so that can kind of turn my crank for a minute, maybe not make me want to sing for a minute. So I would jump into something else just so I could keep my sanity. I think that does probably happen without any kind of plan, you know? But what I do know is no matter if you're having a good day, a bad day, an on day, or an off day, if you don't show up to this building, the magic man cannot meet you here.
Hmm.
Right? So if you gotta show up, and not every song's gonna be a masterpiece, and not every painting's gonna be a masterpiece, but most of them can be if you let it, right? And it may not happen that day, but if you get some seeds, whether they're voice things, sketches, ideas, write down. I'm always just writing, you know, however you happen to capture it on the moment, whether it's moleskin with pen or the voice memo, whatever. Always trying to churn that shit up and see if it's gonna relate to something else. A lot of times lyrics from songs end up in my paintings. I'll
Mm.
do layers and layers in my paintings. Underneath this one, there's a story or a poem. You know, there was one that I did in fuck, got a whole bunch of them. Um, Jim Croce. There never seems to be enough time to do the things you want to do once you find them, right? So I use both hands. I had shoulder surgery, so I had to learn how to use both hands. And so I use both hands on all pictures, like this at the same time. Backwards, forwards, backward, forwards, backward, forwards with letters. Writing things. So never seems to be enough time to do things with both hands at the same time. The right hand's a little more clear, the left hand's getting a little better, but you can kind of tell what I'm doing. I take it all the way and I cover the canvas with that first. Then I do a wash over it, come back and do whatever happens. But most of them have lyrics, a clip from a book, a quote from a song, whatever it happens to be, something I'm listening to at the moment, catch some line from, you know, Black Uhuru about promised land is what you make it, or something like that. Put it in there, you know, and I cover it up, and it helps fuel the painting. It helps my blood flow. It helps my, uh, stream of consciousness thing, right? The more you tap up into the thing, the easier the channel is when you tap into it. Oh, there's some of us that know about it from writing. You know about it from writing. You got to fucking dig in. You got to allow yourself to get there. You can't outsmart your brain, man. You know, you just let it do what it does. Do your best to harness it. That's probably the key. That's why heroes are heroes, because they learn how to harness some shit. They use their tools that they were given, not necessarily the fastest runner or the best guitar player. Use what you're given, right? If we look at that for a moment, our most heralded, modern day anyway, rock artists, legacy artists, they are now, um, are not necessarily the best singer, buddy. You know, is Bob Dylan the best singer? Fuck no. But can he write these things and captivate us and do that because he's using what he's got to use, and it's so fucking human factor, the high is so high that we're automatically all right, right, no matter who it is. It's the same. Mick Jagger, best singer? No. No. James Hetfield, best singer? No. They're not. But they present it, use what they got to use, right? Is Angus Young the best guitar player? No. But yes, he is.
So I thought you were talking metaphorically, but it occurred you're talking to me literally. That you say there are lyrics on that painting behind you. You mean they're actually like the physical? You had lyrics on the canvas first, actual words.
Usually the first layer.
Okay, so walk me through that. Walk me through how that you even originated that. How did that even begin? And why I that's fascinating that, but I'd love to know how you discovered that. But are you looking at the lyrics and that inspires you then to create an image? Because I know there's certainly connections. I mean, the visual art and the written word, but I'd love to know how that even started.
My idea when first dove into painting, and when I had my shoulder stuff done, I couldn't play guitar. It was very limited. And so I had to find other things to do. So one arm worked at a time. I'd have a sling and and so learn to do the paintings and the drawings with whichever hand works at the moment. And so then began using both. So my main hand is my right hand. So I write everything with my left. So it comes from a different chunk of my mind. You know, I take off my glasses in the middle of painting and take it from there and put it back on again. Just trying to get all of my multiple personalities or whatever in there onto the canvas. But to answer your question specifically, when I was first drawn to Jean Dubuffet, Michel Basquiat, Jean-Michel, and these kind of cats. Um, I wanted my pictures to look like the walls of a town that had been graffiti for a couple 100 years. So if you look all the way under, or if you're able to do that, that thing where they do the paintings that are underneath the painting and everything. I'll think of that word in a minute.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the same type of trip. So if you were to look at it and that bill got posted, then it got pulled down, then now it got glued over it, then some gang kind of sprayed, and then some kid wrote his name like that, and there was I love Eileen, and then whatever the hell, all those things over all the years, that's what I want the picture to look like. So this one, it's just like if you look in there, there is the constellations are marked. The sky that was over me at the moment when I made that painting, the stars are all marked inside there. If you go all the way back in there, there's a bunch of Cypress Hill lyrics inside it. There's just you have to different languages, all the things underneath it. I don't know if you can see all the way up in here underneath his foot. So there's a bunch of words underneath there. I'll let the white come out and not cover it up and not bury it. So everyone has some kind of thing like that. So it's always from wanting it to be as haphazard as possible. And so you really have to take time to decipher the picture. If you're going to live with this, it'll be like a show, a program that has a bunch of episodes and you keep watching it to tie the plot together. It really is that. Because there's things when I come to this thing's been up here 16 years, whatever. So I look in there and I finally see like, I don't remember, but and then that ties to the thing and starts making sense to me when I was on that layer. If I look at the tool I used, so I look for the fine tipped black marker. And they say, so at that moment, that's what I was thinking. So that has medical terms and different different shit that was going on, whether the TV's on and I hear something, the music's on and I hear something. I have my books open with all kind of different things and see something and scratch it on there. You know, that's the difference between um let's see, I guess writing and music are more writing actual book or lyrics or poems is actually more like music because there are some kind of rules, kind of better if it's in tune, that type of shit. But in painting, there are no rules and there are no wrongs. Yes, it can end up mud. Yes, it can. But it doesn't necessarily have to be that blue goes with that, goes with this in order for it to be, no, it's it's expression, purest, just blah, that kind of thing. Regurgitation, truly, but just through different, no rules, no limits on what mediums that you put on the canvas. Spray paint, oil, sticks, pencil, pen, it doesn't matter. Doesn't have to. It really, really, really doesn't have to be in tune. Really.
So it reminds me of the Ernest Hemingway quote. I'd love to get your take on this. Ernest Hemingway said all writers should go to art galleries to get inspired. Which is interesting because I can understand maybe going to a show and that inspiring you to write poems because there's an overlap in the written word. But we're talking about one medium inspiring another. I'd love to get your take on how true that is. Like, how do you think visual art would inspire you as a lyricist, if it would?
Oh, I think it would absolutely, absolutely. And I think it has a few times. My wife and I come back from when we did, Rodin Museum for the first time, or these kind of things, and seeing things that I didn't know existed. The famous stuff, that's cool, but I kind of already could predict it. But the stuff that I didn't know that he did, weeping in the fucking gallery, man. What the hell just happened? I didn't plan. I wasn't loopy or
Hmm.
created or any kind of thing. My sugar was up. I was fine. I walked in there clear headed. I walked around things, see this sculpture, and just broke down. So why did that happen? Why does a song make bumps go up on you? You should never have to try to like any fucking thing. You should not, oh, I have to try to like that because everybody else likes it. No, man. It either fucking hits you or it doesn't. And some things are hit you with way more intensity. Some are okay. Some are no for me. Some are like, oh my God, did you feel that? That can happen with art. That can happen with visual art. It happens a lot more with music, right? But it can happen with visual art. You can be moved in that way. So after I'd been to that, I went back and wrote poems and things about the lady with the half a face, and just absolutely. Yep, they're all intertwined anyway. I know it's a common thing to say, I guess, but I gotta say, I've proven the links to be secure and true. You know, I've sold paintings for stupid, I don't understand why, money, you know? And that wasn't I didn't plan it, I didn't make the rules, none of that shit, it just fucking happened. I pursued it, I immersed myself, and people show respect, and there it is, okay? But I would never have fucking imagined that. The music thing, the hard work, the songs are good, people like that, like, a little more understandable, comprehensible. Not this. Not this. This is not. But I have proven that it can't be done. Can't be done all the way around. So lyric, art, music can all tie in depending on the heart and the hands it comes from, I guess.
All right, shifting gears slightly. I interviewed Lucinda Williams a couple months ago, and she said something that blew my mind. She said, I can never write about dark spaces when I'm in a dark space. She said, I have to be content. I've got to be in a content space to write about darkness. And on one hand, that makes sense. I mean, can we write about darkness when we're in darkness? But that idea that she can't write about sadness and darkness, she's got to be in a happy space, in a content space. Um, and I'd love to know if that's true for you. And maybe that's a bigger question of emotional distance. Again, Hemingway. I'm quoting Hemingway today all the time, and Hemingway said you can't write about Paris when you're in Paris. You got to write about Paris when you're somewhere else. So broadly, I'd love to get your take on those ideas.
Wow. That is something because it seems like it could be more direct. I think in hmm, boy, that's a complex one, man. That's got a bunch of layers to it, you know.
That's why we're here.
Yeah. Um depending on the genre and so forth, that's kind of where the you have to choose your playing field, I think, for the most part. If there's not a lot of music that goes guru and is singing about flowers and shit, right? So it's this automatically is conducive to something a little darker or scarier or monstery or whatever it happens to be. It definitely does that. Sweeter, softer air supply, whatever the fuck, I don't know, something. But it would be that would be more conducive to my lovey-dovey thing with the wind blowing and all that stuff, right? Logically, as far as what the music expresses without lyric. It already is leaning into those things. While you're writing something, it's usually more reflective. You don't have to be standing in the mud to write about the mud, you know? You already were in the mud one time and you remember and you've had time to process it. So then you go, you remember that time in the mud? So you don't, but there are also times morose, sad, depressive, traumatic things that are beyond your control, and you're like, "Fuck!" With anything, all the money in the world couldn't fix it, type of shit. Um, I would be very, not the word isn't inspired. I would be driven to write something deeply expressive because I'm feeling deeply.
Hmm.
You know, some of the shallower, not shallower, surfacey. I don't know what the fuck it is, but not from deep trauma. If one of my latest originals that we're rocking now, it's so much fun. Kind of going, I call it ring. It's the style is Ringo Billy, so it's cross between Ringo Starr and Rockabilly, Ringo Billy, right? Because you always going shot, so it has to always have that going, yeah. But the words are a couple of terms that my mother would always say to me, or things she'd take out of a Hank Williams song, and but it would cruising for a bruise, and she always used to say, maybe your mom did too. But and so I put that into a song. That's what my mama would say. But I talk about my daddy was a race car driver and a thing, but put it up to the mom. My mama says, I would be ready to make your getaway. You're cruising for a bruising. So I tied that into a happy, visual, upbeat, wheels rolling type of thing, even though it actually comes from a very somber place. Memory of my mother and memory of what she would say to me in these things. The chorus is from a very somber, not traumatic, just eventually finally accepting some of it type of place. So, but it's so upbeat and freaking, you know, boogie, you know. But it came from a very not boogie place. So it could swing either way. It really depends, man. I think that the more it goes back to the harnessing again. And I think worldliness, you know, comprehension of actually what makes the world go around, and seeing some things, seeing some hardship, seeing some holy shit glory, and a bunch of stuff in between that you can't understand or can't make sense of. After you do that a few times around the world, you start seeing, okay, I'm very thankful for every day. I'm very grateful when that says H on there, right? And I turn it that way, and hot, warm water or hot, clean water comes out. And this one says C and cold, clean water comes out. Dude, fuck. Okay. Let's be real about things in the world with 8 billion people. That is a thing. But you maybe not realize until you went around the world 5 times and saw some shit. So where I write from is from those experiences. I imagine everybody writes from experiences, but not always.
Yeah. All right, another author quote. Agatha Christie said, "The best time to write a book is when you're doing the dishes." The idea that the eureka moments happen when our brains are engaged in unconscious activity. So, Kebmo told me that he gets ideas while he's folding laundry. I've heard people say vacuuming, gardening. Mark Morton loves to gets ideas when he's gardening. The idea, or there was an article in the Washington Post about why we get our best ideas in the shower. So the idea is that when your brains are engaged in monotonous activities, that's when the eureka moments happen. So how often does that happen to you?
I think that that is right. And the mindless mind clearing type of thing, when you're not having distractions of screens and people and kids and obligations and things like that, I find mine either on my bicycle or in the pool. So not necessarily on, I guess, in between tasks too, but when I'm in something, it's kind of engaging. So it has to be a mindless thing where I don't have my phone on, I don't have anything around. I usually do, 20 minutes to a half hour on my bike a day, and I do 20 minutes in the pool a day, 5 days a week. Um, and especially the pool is when, there's no gravity, right?
Yeah.
So there's not all this thing and whatever that physiological explanation may be, but I'm floating, right? And so as I do my thing, and it's just swimming is such an uh, connected thing because you got to keep the breathing, you got to keep the moves, you got to keep the buoyancy, you got to keep, it's all at once and has to be in rhythm and everything like that for it to be real and for you to benefit from it. So because of that, you're thinking about your actual, the touch with your body, knowing what your legs are doing, your arms are doing. It takes you off of the phone call that happened over there, this money thing that happened over here, or this challenge over here. So I would say it could be washing the dishes and that kind of thing. I find it usually to be physical activity when I'm kicking my dopamine and kicking my adrenaline from athletic things, as opposed to the musical thing, because that's where my biggest doses come from.
I would think also that swimming, there's something, I'm sure we can go deep into the Freudian reasons, but I feel also
Right.
like when you're on a bike, there's more of a mechanical connection, whereas swimming is more authentically bodily, I guess, right?
Yeah, for real. From the beginning, I get what you're saying, right? From the get go, floating. Yeah, for sure. And in water. Yeah. Yeah. A liquid. Yeah. That,
All right,
that,
very specific question. When it comes to lyrics, are you a pen and paper person or a technology person?
I'm a pen and paper person first. And then in order for me to put the lyrics in front of my boys or put the charts in front of my boys, then I take it over to the computer. But first it's always pen and paper, yes. It's easier for me to work it out that way. And then if I want to go on there and scrap and edit a little bit deeper, like with the book, um, but lyrics are, yeah, handwritten.
Now, very specific, because I do find that songwriters have very specific ideas when it comes to brand of pen, color of ink, type of paper. That's a pretty plain. There's nothing fancy about that pen, is there?
That's the razor, precise razor. That's the
Yeah,
black one. And the pad is called gold something. Yeah.
yeah,
But
I love it.
I use my Moleskine for all my notes and all the things like that, so that's an everyday thing, but it's when I get down to start doing my lyric stuff, it's that gold, yeah, what the heck, and the razor, yeah, that's it.
Now, what about how important is the general ritual? I find that I'm a morning person. There are certain chairs that are important to me. My fear is that when I limit myself, that means that creates excuses for me not to create if I'm not in that space. But regardless, There are certain there's certain chairs I like to be in certain times of day. So is that important to you?
Um, I have found myself on the move for the majority of my life.
Yeah.
Um, I love finding my own cubby hole du jour, I really do. And finding my space, whether it's outside on a bench somewhere, whatever, back or not, and not where necessarily all the traffic is, or not like back behind the hotel, one little spot that nobody else, this th- this kind of stuff. Um, usually find the ability to. There's been some places surprising of how creative I was able to get with people around too, because that's usually not a thing. We isolate, right? So we can find the magic man, do our thing and get all crazy and listen to what we want to and yell and scream and do whatever we have to do to create. But um I remember one specifically the last time I went through Heathrow, I sat in the lounge there and I knocked down a bunch of really cool drawings. They were on this cloth paper, a fiber paper with this really deep markers that I got in Sweden. And which just something just happened. And there's people all around, they're changing, but I had a 5-hour layover or something. I ended up with a pile of them, things like this. I just went. Somehow the energy around me, I was able to harness it and block it out at the same time, you know? And when you're in a place like that, all the international vibe and all the different languages and the things, there's something to feeling a world citizen to get that kind of a big reach for stuff. The pictures I was doing were, you know, like playing cards looking thing where the jack of when I would specify whatever country it was, the jack of so and so playing a Fender 58 P-Bay, and then that would be the picture. That would be the thing that I made up, and this guy's playing a flying V, kind of trying to do juxtaposition of things. Queen so and so playing a flying V or whatever, but it just showed up. So it could be anywhere.
All right, let's end with this because we're running out of time. What writers have had the greatest inspiration on you as a songwriter? And it can be any genre. But I do find that, I mean, I've interviewed songwriters who've been around for decades, and there's a pretty clear through line between output and reading, right? People who are the best writers are the people who read a lot. So I'd love to get your take on who's inspired you. What writers, not songwriters, writers have inspired you?
Um, I think the most captivating for the first couple of decades would have been Stephen King.
Yeah.
Because I'm not a deep cut guy when it comes to reading. Is that a term for books too? A deep cut listener, deep cut reader. And then over time, Kurt Vonnegut and
Mm.
George Orwell and these kind of fantastical yet accurate things, prophetic type of stuff. Um, I think those probably played the biggest part. But what probably hour for hour spent the most time reading would be Bukowski, John Fonte, or this kind of weird shit like that. Because when you're on tour and that, and you only get a chance in between to get those 18 pages and you get those 6 and you get those 9, 'cause right? So if you're sitting there for a second, you could read through a chunk of chapters of Bukowski or 12 or 15 poems in that time and still get some kind of weird thing from it, like, dude, what is this guy? What the hell? But also such is the word transparency? I don't know what it is in writing, but it was so fucking believable. That really like any good movie or something where you see really good actors doing some kind of thing is so fucking believable. And that's the kind of things I always gravitated to, I guess.
So Vonnegut comes up a lot, Bukowski, also Raymond Carver and Cormac McCarthy, all because of economy of language. Like it's no mystery that songwriters gravitate towards those because they're all about word economy. I mean, Cormac McCarthy, obviously, and Raymond Carver, are the other two, but they come up a lot because every word counts. You can't take out any word in a Cormac McCarthy novel and expect it to maintain the meaning, and that's why he's an amazing writer. So,
The
um,
good jokes, you pull out one word and it doesn't work, this kind of stuff, very much so, very much.
all right,
So
last question, quick follow up. That is, if you're reading a book and you aren't feeling it, do you have to finish it, or can you put it away and never come back to it again?
I can put it away, maybe check it again, or maybe never come back to it. Yeah, you know what I mean? I don't usually if it doesn't hit me right away, kinda like a song too or a movie, if it doesn't hit me like that, I'm probably not gonna pursue it if I find because right next to it is something else that I am digging, you know? And I find myself more and more I do audiobooks and all that thing to try to be able to keep doing my task. So I can keep painting and keep doing my stuff if I have that going, and I'm able to soak it in that way it seems, to be entertaining, but I still do value this, and, there are still a few that I, go back to and read again, you know, gosh, there's a lot of I like biographies. I like autobiographies. I like reading about my musical heroes. I like B.B. King biography, James Brown biography, Willie Nelson biography, Greg Allman biography, Anthony Kiedis biography, Flea. My peers and my heroes and my younger heroes. Well, right? If it comes right down to it, that's what I read the most is other people's stories that I can relate to or I look up to a lot or both.
And that's it for the latest episode of Songwriters on Process. You can find all of the old episodes on all major streaming platforms and probably some minor ones as well. You can also find them on the Songwriters on Process website. I started the site back in 2011, so that means there are hundreds upon hundreds of interviews with some of the world's best songwriters. So take a deep dive into some of those episodes. They are all great. Of course, I'm biased. Also, shameless plug. My book, Desolation, a Heavy Metal Memoir by Mark Morton with Benno Papari, that is me, is out now on Hachette Books and in all major bookstores. Mark is a good friend of mine. He is the guitarist in the metal band Lamb of God. And so we collaborated on his memoir. I'm biased, but that's a damn good book. Again, it is called Desolation, a Heavy Metal Memoir. And lastly, if you want to get in touch, go to the Songwriters on Process website. You can fill out a handy contact form and it'll get to me that way. You can also email me at ben@songwritersonprocess.com. I'm all ears. Send me your comments, your suggestions, your complaints, people you want me to interview. I get great suggestions all the time. I can't respond to all of the emails because I get a lot of them, but I do read all of them. And let me know your thoughts. If you have ideas for people you want me to interview, there's your chance. And with that, I am out. See you next time.